What a week of racing it's been. The Melbourne Cup Carnival might be over for another year, but the spring action continues on to Cranbourne this weekend. Robbie Griffiths, Matt de Kock will join us in the studio to look ahead to that. But we welcome along to After Last Paul Tatner and Michael Christian to discuss what's been and what's to look ahead to. Michael, thanks for joining us. It's been a winning week on the track as well. Well done with In Secret, a filly that you bred, winning the Coolmore Stud.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. Great to be here and very exciting. Yes, she is a bit of a star, we think. So she's out of a mare that we bred and her second foal, In Secret, and she did an amazing job in the Coolmore. Very impressive.
Overall, was it a good week, Cup week for yourself?
Yeah, it was great. That made it very, very special. Look, in the breeding game that I'm involved in, it's tough in terms of trying to breed horses, you know, to get to a point where you have a foal and take them through that whole process, even get them to a yearling sale is a challenge. Get them out of the yearling sale, get them to the track is a challenge, then get him to win a maiden race is a challenge. And to think that you can win an elite Group 1 with a filly like In Secret is just beyond your wildest dreams. So it's been an amazing week. So very enjoyable.
Absolutely. Paul, we're coming into this show 2 days after Champions Day, which was the new innovation for Cup Week. Now that we've had time to digest it all, was it a success?
I think it was an outrageous success when you look at it. There's a few doubters when it was first announced, shifting of a Group 1 to the last Saturday. But you look at the crowds, you look at the quality of racing alone, 3 Group 1s and 3 pretty significant upsets, which we're going to dissect quite shortly. But no, I was an unbiased fan from the start. You look at the results from the fan, I think the wagering will be quite strong as well. We call it a success.
Speaking of wagering, winning or losing week on the wagering front?
Right until the last race on Saturday, it was a losing day, but our punters group is quite richer thanks to Snapper, so we'll count it.
Wow.
Yeah, how good's that?
Excellent result. Let's look back on Saturday's racing then. And we didn't get the results we expected in the 3 Group 1s. Let's start off in the Champion Sprint, where it wasn't Nature Strip taking the prize as many had predicted. Instead, it was Rockin' Horse. She just loves the straight, Michael.
Yeah, well, she won, of course, the Newmarket in emphatic fashion, and yeah, you can see her just there in the green, coming through in the middle, and just really accelerated from this point, from the 200 metre. And the filly that we part own and bred is just to her left, and they were equal at the 200, but Rockin' Horse was just outstanding in that run to the line. And I've got to say, Nature Strip, although he was beaten, it was very gallant of him. I mean, he was very bold, and I think to be beaten as much as he was, given he looked like at the 100 he might drop out, beaten 1.5, maybe 2 lengths, he kept fighting to the line. So it was a really strong performance.
And that's as an 8-year-old as well. Let's not forget, he travelled to Europe, won, come back, run a good Everest. At the 200 metre mark, I'm like, this could be it.
Yeah.
He came back on a pretty hard track as well. There's a few that have pulled up a bit sore post-Saturday as well. So really impressive from the champ.
Yeah, well, I think we ended up on a good 3 for the... Look, it's one of those things. The key races, the 3 championship races, were all run on good 3s. And I think there would have been a lot of people thinking that at least let's run them on a good 4, but they're the vagaries of our racing. But yeah, Paul, you're right. There was a number of horses, including our Bella Nipotina, that pulled up really sore, jarred up from the track.
Well, plenty of people expected in the Champion Stakes that Animo would make it 5 from 5 this spring. He was beaten, though, by Zaki. Are you blaming the track as well when you think of Animo, or are you thinking that it's one run too many after peaking for a Cox Plate? How do you analyse this performance?
Well, look, I think we saw Zaki, you know, absolutely do a brilliant job there, and similar scenario in the 2,000 metre race. I'm forgiving of Animo. I think he loomed on Thunderstruck, who's been in outstanding form, and they were matched up as the match race. They both just couldn't make ground. They just couldn't make ground in those final furlong. So I'm forgiving of both of them.
And what a ride on Zaki as well. I thought Jamie Carr rode him really well on the Cox Plate. Obviously, just got beaten by a better horse in the day, but I thought she rode exceptionally well on Saturday and just far too good. She
did indeed. She almost took a leaf out of the book from Tim Clark, what he was able to do on Alligator Blood, who took out the Champions Mile. Let's have a look. This is terrific vision. Gay Waterhouse sharing it on social media. I think this is another highlight from Saturday, Paul, that racing's ambassadors really took to the stage there and sharing their horses and themselves with the people.
I was actually in the mounting yard at one stage on Saturday and I watched her walk past the crowd and everybody knew who she was, and to her credit, she stopped and said hello. And we'll see some footage shortly too of Jamie Carr post-race, talking to the young fans in racing. We all talk about the big stars of the sport, the horses, but it's really important that as many younger participants get to meet the stars of our sport to breed that next generation.
Let's have a look at what Jamie Carr was able to do before celebrating the win on Zaki. This is her on Zaki. She just rated this horse to perfection, Michael.
Yeah, it was a great ride, wasn't it? And look, he's a superstar, there's no question. He just hasn't had things go his own way. And the fact that Alligator Blood went back to the mile meant that they weren't racing each other, weren't putting pressure on each other, and they were both, I reckon, breathed a sigh of relief that they didn't have each other to pressure them in the early part of the race. And she timed it to absolute perfection, didn't she, Jamie? It was a great ride.
And these were great scenes as well, from her sharing herself with her fans and signing goggles, giving them a hug. This would have made these girls dance.
Oh, it's just fantastic. And look, I reckon the more of this we can, and you touched on it, Paul, with Gay, I mean, the more of this we can see, the better it's going to be for our industry. And just taking the time and asking, what's your name, and signing properly, and look, spending the time, it's just great. And if our jockeys and trainers can do more of this, it's really going to be a real fillip for our sport.
Absolutely. Terrific stuff there from Gai Waterhouse and from Jamie Carr. What about James McDonald on the week that he had? It wasn't quite the record-breaking week of 2021, but 2022 wasn't too bad either. You had In Secret with him on the Saturday, one of his 4 winners. And then let's have a look at what happened with a Tissue on Saturday. This was in the Matriarch Stakes. It was relatively early on in the card. And at this point, Michael, we're thinking, here's win number 8. He's got Nature Strip Animo to come. Yeah. Surely it's just a certainty that he's going to either equal or go better than last year.
Yeah, look, he got close on a few, didn't he? But I suppose if you analyse every jockey's probably got well, not every jockey, but there's a number of jockeys who could say, oh, if only I'd done this, or only the horse performed a fraction better, then we would have been OK. But he's a star, there's no question. And, certainly as an owner, if J-Mac's on your horse, you've a massive chance. So he had a great week, wasn't as good as last year, but it was certainly a great week for him.
Yeah, 8 winners in a cup week, still nothing to be sneezed at. And then he's gone on to do something that will live with him forever now. He's started a new chapter in his career, the chapter of fatherhood today, Paul.
And none bigger than that and none more beautiful than that. We see here today his wife, Kate, has given birth to young baby Evie. So it's a bit of chat around, would it interfere with his racing? He's on suspension, I think, Michael, at the moment. Congratulations there to James and to Kate. There's nothing better than being a father, and he's had some pretty significant highs of late, but none bigger than this. And congratulations to them all.
Yep, on behalf of the whole racing.com family, we pass on now congratulations to Caitlin Megan and to James McDonald.
Caitlin's timing is just exquisite.
Oh, yeah.
But James' Riding's timing is perfect, and her timing off the track is perfect.
That's just fantastic.
Just wait for Sunday night, I think, for the baby to come around as the Sunday after Cup week finish.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
As Dennis Committee would say, centimetre perfect with that one. Looking further abroad then, a massive weekend of racing in the United States with the Breeders' Cup, and the Breeders' Cup Classic was taken out by Flightline, the best horse in the world. What a horse he was, we can say now, because he's off to start. This was his final race start. Michael, they ran, I think, the first 1,200 of this in 1:07. They went like last week's Pay out in front. That's the horse Life is Good who led up with him. He fades. Flightline keeps on going to win by 8
Life
lengths.
is Good finished, look, I don't know, you might be able to tell me how many lengths behind, but you'll see as the horses run past in the white colours, way back there. I watching this race, I was really quite concerned. I'm thinking, this speed is just frenetic. It was unbelievable to take a 2,000 metre race out like this, but he is an absolute superstar.
So he retires undefeated,
Yep.
6 from 6. There's a 2.5% share available in him.
Are you thinking about picking it up?
I would need Paul Tatton to afford it. What sort of money would that go for, though?
It's almost write your own ticket, isn't it? The reported price for Justify was reported, mind you, not confirmed, 80 million US. So you could argue that this horse is more dynamic, more exciting than Justify, even though he hasn't won the Triple Crown. So it's got to be in that sort of framework. And if you go back and work the numbers and I'm not a stallion farm, but if you, the way they sort of work through it is, and take American Pharaoh, for example, he stood his first year at 200,000 US. So assume 200,000, 180 mares, what's that, 36 million, and then over 4 years gets to 144 million US, we're talking. Say you take 80% of those mares get in foal, you're getting back to 115 million US. So you're talking around $100 million on two different sort of measures, if you like. It's a roundabout value of what this horse is worth, around 100 million US.
So what, 2.5 million US for our 2.5% share? Don't think we'll be able to get that in a look
I've seen your
around the
pay slip, Ed. You're not far away, actually. So.
I wish.
It's a lot of money, isn't it?
It is a lot of money, but a big opportunity for someone to get involved with Flightline. The other Breeders' Cup news concerns William Buick. He copped a bit of criticism for his rides in Australia, but he bounced back in terrific style by winning 2 Group Grade 1s on the program, including the Breeders' Cup Mile on Modern Games here, Mike.
Yeah, just emphatic. And he judged it to a nicety, William. As you said, Edward, we didn't quite see the best of him during Cup Week, but isn't it amazing, the life of an international jockey to ride in our biggest carnival and then to fly to America, to Kentucky and participate in one of their great weeks. It's a great life if you can find a few winners and a few nice horses to ride.
I think for William and for Frankie Dettori, they went from Australia to Dubai and then from Dubai over to the States. So it's a fair bit of travelling, but William was superb in America over the weekend. Time for a break. On the other side of this, more industry news with Paul Tatnell. Great to have your company on After the Last on this Monday night. Let's get into the industry news. And we've had Cup Week now, Paul. We've had time to digest the facts, the figures. The crowd, more than 244,000 across the 4 days. Is that a good figure? Oh,
it's a good figure when you look at it compared to the last couple of years of no crowds on course, Ed, but a little bit short of where the VRC were looking for. They're looking for, say, 300,000 across the 4 days. Let's not forget that Melbourne Cup Day was like being in the middle of July with the weather. Derby Day wasn't fantastic weather either, so can be a few excuses there why the crowds are down. Looking at the wagering, though, the wagering's really strong. Derby Day is up about 10% year on year, according to Racing Victoria. Industry sources also say the Melbourne Cup and race turnover was at least on par, if not better, than years gone by. I did talk to one bookie this afternoon, though, one major bookie in Australia. They say Oaks Day was by far their biggest struggle this year, turnover down on that day. I think crowds were a bit flat as well. So I don't know what you guys think, Ed, Michael. Maybe Oaks Day next year could be one day they could look at revitalising, maybe in a similar way to Champions Day. Yeah,
really interested in what Glenn Boss had to say on the wrap yesterday, just talking about the fact that delay the start of the meeting, make it a twilight evening type meeting, which I reckon is a great idea.
Yeah, I think that would work too. I would like to see that. But I guess also from a programming point of view, does the Oaks need an undercard race or another decent race to attract it? Because
I think that's a really good thought, because with the 3-year-old fillies, and of course we have the 3-year-old fillies over 2,500 metres, we also have the 3-year-old fillies in the 1,000 guineas, but we don't have a 3-year-old fillies Group 1 sprinting race over 1,200 or 1,100. And maybe that's something, you know, that can be considered, because as a breeder and trying to, you know, develop fillies to have a profile and to win stakes races, it's almost penalising sprinting type 3-year-old fillies, which is a part of the overall spectrum that Australia is so well known for. I mean, we produce the best sprinters in the world, yet we don't have a 3-year-old filly sprinting race. We have the 1,000 guineas, we have the Oaks over 25, but we don't have a sprinting race. So maybe in combination with the VRC Oaks, a 3-year-old Group 1 fillies sprint, which should really heighten things.
I think what what I've also heard is that the RV and the clubs will look at doing spring a little bit different next year, potentially some extra changes to the final day at Zipping Classic, but I wouldn't rule out as well some more investment and attention put into Oaks Day. I think the Champions Day, that really worked, and we've seen that innovation really can work on those traditional days, so it would make sense for Oaks Day to get the next crack at it.
And just another example, Paul, here of, just the programming over and I talk about the sprinting fillies and sprinting mares. If you look over the spring, the 11 to 1200 metres, there's 4 Group 3s over that distance, yet the fillies and mares over 1400 metres under the same set weights and penalties conditions are all Group 2s, which has always been a bit of a mystery for me in terms of the programming. And again, penalising those mares and fillies that are sprinting fillies. So there's a bit of an anomaly there. So maybe that's something they can look at.
Oh, sold me. The new general manager of racing used to sit in that chair. So perhaps we can get him on the phone.
You've got a direct line, I know. There's a bit of food for thought there, no doubt. You've been busy because you also caught up recently with the new racing minister, Anthony Carbines, to discuss a range of topics, starting off with the funding models for racing.
No Worse Off is currently in the legislation and a very clear position from the industry, and has been the supportive position from the government when we've had changes in POC previously. So as we might say, past form is a strong indication of future form, but I think we've got to allow WBL to play out unfettered from conversation and commentary from people in my chair, and then we pick that up and that broader work around POC and the like. But ultimately, our goal is a strong industry, supported and well-funded industry as we've seen, and that's clearly the priority that the industry expects our government or anyone sitting in this chair to deliver.
I think the most important line there, guys, is that racing cannot be worse off under new funding models. Now, the new wagering licence, very important piece of work, is currently being worked on by RV and the bookies. That essentially funds the industry, and that does come in short in terms of what they may get. Then we look at things like point of consumption tax rising. So I think a lot of people in state government, Racing Victoria, will make sure that the industry is no worse off, does contribute billions of dollars to the economy. So an important line there from the minister.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the next part of the interview. This concerns the future of Sandown.
Some of those new committee members have advocated at least having an early vote on whether to sell Sandown and potentially even walk away from the rezoning process. Now, the state government has given a tax exemption to the windfall gains tax for the sale of Sandown. If they walk away from the sale of Sandown, does that tax exemption then walk as well?
They'll have their chance to look under the hood now in detail with a successful Caulfield Carnival done. But ultimately, the significant planning work, the windfall gains tax arrangements that the government's provide on those early planning processes that have occurred out at MRC put them in a strong position. And they'll have to make their decisions, as I'm sure they will, about where to next. But I'm confident from my perspective and the industry's perspective, and the government will continue to work with MRC as they go through their planning processes and the opportunities that we've been able to partner with them. But ultimately, they've got to make the call.
Very important to note there that the planning exemptions they've received, they're worth $150 million. And they were lucky to get that. Let's make no mistake of that. That was essentially because they put the planning application before the tax was announced. It's my understanding that the communication to someone at the club, if they change the planning application or walk away from it, that $150 million exemption is unlikely to remain. So I'm not advocating one way or the other, of course, but it's a very important development, I would imagine, regarding Sandown.
So where do we end up, Paul? Where do we end up with Sandown?
I think the common sense, I think people have realised that perhaps there's enough land there to potentially develop it and remain racing. That seems to be more of a consensus view. I honestly don't have a view what should or could happen, but there's certainly some a while ago that didn't advocate for anything at Sandown, potentially now saying parts may be the smarter option.
OK, well, we're going to be talking more about Sandown too with Robbie Griffiths. He's joining us on the other side of the break together with his training partner in Matt de Kock. As we go to the break, though, let's look back on the week that's been at Flemington, thanks to our friends at Racing Photos.
Nature Strip's going to have to lift. Rocket Horse, the centre, just in front of Nature Strip. Rocket Horse.
It's what dreams are made of, and I'm lost for words.
Alligator Blood, 100 metres to go. Still clear from Tuvalu. Alligator Blood holding on. The Alligator wins. Still Zaki holding on. Zaki back to back.
To be riding last year through the carnival and then to be winning a Group 1 on one of the best days of racing, it's just an unbelievable feeling.
Sosie Bond down the outer. King Magnus at the 100 with no effort. Sosie Bond there. King Magnus surges. King Magnus in front, looking for a local win. King Magnus won the Cranbourne Cup.
Spring racing heads to Cranbourne on Saturday for the 2022 Cranbourne Cup. Won last year, as you just saw, by King Magnus, trained by Robbie Griffiths and Matt de Kock, who have both made their way into the studio. Robbie, you've been at Cranbourne for a long time. That must have been a special win for you.
Yeah, it was, Edward. It was very special being a Cranbourne lad growing up there and being the inaugural running of the Cup back to the 1600. It was a very special day, and especially first with the partnership with Matt, and it was a very special day indeed.
Matt, welcome to you. Where does that day stand in your training career, particularly since coming to Australia?
Yeah, right up there to win a race of that stature in your hometown, which is now my hometown. It was very special for me, and to do it with Robbie was awesome. And King Magnus is just such a special individual horse. He's a fighter and probably represents what our yard is. You know, we're fighters and we like to win.
And Robbie, you said you're a Cranbourne boy, because isn't it true that you had your stable and actually built the track around your stable? That's how long you've been there?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
And now you've had all these invaders just swarm in.
They've all taken advantage of all what we've sowed all the seeds there, and it's all ready to come the harvest.
Yeah.
They've won the Melbourne Cup. Everything's been won from Cranbourne now, Chris. So fantastic.
Well, from a training point of view then, how important is this day to showcase Cranbourne and what the training centre has become too, because it's developed so much, particularly in the last 12 months?
Oh, it's the biggest and the best in Australia, and I think what validates that is all the results. I mean, I think every Group 1 race this season has been won from Cranbourne, bar only a couple. The Godolphins have won, really, and and the fact that Matt's here too, you know, like Matt and Mike have travelled the world, and Matt chose Cranbourne to make his home, so. And I think that's a massive validation, because, Matt could have gone anywhere in Australia, but, to set up and chose Cranbourne because it is the best, So we've got, and the proof's in the pudding when you start seeing those results come out that we're seeing now. It's the only track that doesn't coexist with racing, so the horses get to have 10 wonderful tracks to train from, heated pools, all sorts of things. The natural training tracks out the back, the deep sand in the hills are just brilliant, And then you step outside the complex and you've got the choice of 2 freeways to get wherever you want, and beaches within minutes. So you've got everything you want. Any wonder the horses are winning.
Absolutely. Matt, there's a common criticism, if you like, of Cranbourne Training Centre. There's 1,000 horses based there, that it's a busy place. You've been all around the world. You're training there every day now. Is that an accurate comment?
No, I don't think so, because like Robbie just mentioned, we've got the luxury of so many options in the morning, and if you break it down every day with horses treadmilling, racing, having recovery, swimming, the choice of so many tracks and the hours that we work from 4 till 9:30, it all spreads itself out very well. And I think with the influx of numbers, the tracks have stood up very well.
Robbie, can I just ask about the expenditure that the club spent? We mentioned, you've been there a long time. You must be absolutely thrilled with the number of options that Matt talks about that you've now got available, which perhaps you didn't have before the influx of the new trainers. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, we've spent, since I've been, president there, we've spent, just before the 40 million was allocated from the Caulfield build or relocation, we've continued to spent 14 or 15 million since 2007, just constantly building more and more and more, So we built an extra outside grass before the new one went in recently, and we continued to build, the Encore stables before the extra Caulfield ones went on, and so on. So when you got those sort of tracks and facilities, it's very easy to spread that load. The big thing about our tracks is that the outside grass is bigger than Flemington. So the inside grass is like the brand new inside grass looks very small. It's actually 60 metres longer than where the Cranbourne Cup's going to be run.
Wow. And the weather through, lots of rain obviously through winter and through the spring. How have the tracks held up?
Amazing. We've only had a couple of, I think there's been twice that we've had the grass closed, and once where we didn't trial on it, we switched to the poly. Each week we've had 2 sets of trials, grass and poly, in case we have to have to switch, and we've only really missed once. We've switched to the poly. And you can see how wide they are. You know, they're sort of 35 metres wide and very, very big. You know, those synthetic tracks are 2,200 metres around. So it's amazing how big and spacious they are. So as you know, Mick Price was saying one day that when you've got 100 metres of grass to use, it's incredible. So we're very fortunate, and it's showing in the results. And we don't have to, as I said, we don't have to coexist with any racing. So it makes such a big difference, you know.
So we saw that vision before, Matt, of King Magnus winning, 2-1 for you. How's King Magnus at the moment, and do we have a horse from the Griffiths to Cox stable to follow for Cranbourne Cup Day this year?
Yeah, King Magnus is going well at the moment. We had a little bit of a slow start to the prep. He was just recovering from a very long season, a bit of wear and tear in his legs, so he needed a long rest, and unfortunately he couldn't be ready to defend his title this year. And again, unfortunately, we couldn't have one in for Saturday to defend our title, but we'll be working towards next year for sure.
And is there one then on Saturday that has been set up as a local hope then for the Griffiths to Cox team?
Yeah, we've got a couple of nominees, maybe Entremet in the 3-year-old handicap. She's been going really well recently. She won 2 of her last 3 starts, so she's one that we're thinking of heading towards Saturday with.
As far as the training side of things goes too, Robbie, we've seen how great Cranbourne is, the success that it's having. What about the new piece of land that Racing Victoria have recently built, and they've showed where it is? Should that be turned into another training centre? Do we need another Cranbourne-type scenario in the state of Victoria?
Oh, I think we do. I think that, you know, through my experiences in the industry, you know, when we used to have 35 training tracks, I think we're down to 28, and realistically we probably need to have about 8 super centres, because then we get a lot of bang for our buck out of the training maintenance money, you know. Like our complex costs $2.8 million a year to run, you know. So you're going to get a lot more efficiencies out of that if you spread that across 1,000 horses. So your cost of product per day to put the horses on for the people to participate, and the wagering dollar and so on. So to get those wheels turning economically and financially, it's far better to do that. You know, the same tractors, the same staff, there's $2.8 million is going to cost the same to run Cranbourne if you've got 100 horses there, because you're paying the same amount of, you know, super, the fertiliser tracks and so on and so on. So you're better off working towards to future-proof the training model, to work towards 8 super centres. So if they have that land and they can have, you know, so many training tracks and so on, you can then have the scope to, with that much acreage, you can put in schools and all sorts of things, you know. So you can really have a wonderful centre. So I think they should for sure.
Have you been there, Robbie? I mean, have you had
Not yet.
No.
Not yet, but, you know, they're moving forward. One of the things that Cranbourne is proof is that when you let the trainers have their say, and that's why Neil Bainbridge has been a fantastic CEO. He said to me, you design them, you've got to work with them. And the proof that Cranbourne's been so successful is that trainers have had their footprint. And I think if you let trainers have their footprint, you're going to have the success because they know what's required. And there's been a lot of copying of Cranbourne around Australia and other jurisdictions. And I think that's a really good formula to future-proof where we're going.
And Matt, am I right in saying you're coming up to the 2-year anniversary with your marriage to Robbie?
Yes.
Is that about right? I mean, in the 2 years, you've seen significant change, haven't you? I mean, wonder what's happened. I mean, it's been incredible.
Yeah, he filed for divorce, but I told him no. That's been a fantastic journey, and we've really rebuilt the whole yard together, and we're still rebuilding. And you know, what do they say? The proof's in the pudding. The horses are running really well at the carnival, and we've got an exciting year ahead again, I think.
And from a strike rate point of view, 13%, not a bad number to have. The stable's been in good form recently, Robbie.
Yeah, as Matt said, you know, it was as well documented that, you know, when I had brain surgery, that sort of brought everything to a halt. You know, it's hard to plan for the future if you're not sure you got one yourself. And at the same time, when I was on the road to recovery, Matt walked into my life, and that gave Sharani and I and Matt and Monique the opportunity to start something really exciting. And as Chriso knows, with his career in sport, when you rebuild a football team, it takes so many seasons to get it going. So we went out and bought some beautiful young horses, and they're starting to develop. They're only 3, so they're only babies. and we bought a diverse amount of horses with stayers and sprinters and so on, and we see Aberfeldy Boy and horses like that in the staying ranks. Let's Be Frank Baby. So we're excited about watching those ones, come up. We've only started 1 2-year-old, and we bought 35 yearlings, so we're looking forward to all of them develop. And she was brilliant, in the 2-year-old the other day. So we're looking forward to them.
We want to elaborate on that after the break.
Okay,
but before we get, because we've got a lot of good horses from your stable we want to talk about. Before we get there, though, just sticking with the training for one moment. Yep. So we've got Melbourne Cup winners like Gold Trip coming out of a super centre like Cranbourne. You say we should have another one. Does that mean we stick to racing at Sandown and keeping that as a race course?
100%. I don't think we can afford to lose facilities, and Sandown's such a great one. I'm all for put my business hat on. I think you've got to capitalise on its value and keep the money for the industry. So a joint venture, like I know where I live, just around at home, close to the training track, it's a golf course and housing. Why can't we have both at Sandown? We don't need a lot of room for our amenities. I think the grandstands are protected by what's it called in the history?
The
heritage listed.
Yes.
Yeah, heritage listed. So we've got to keep that there, so we can turn that into some, it's got to be done up, make it nice, and we can put the horses underground in the tie-up stalls and all the wonderful things you can do these days. You need to have wet areas anyway for housing that can water the track. So why can't we, sell it for 900 million and keep the track? And certainly as scope 1, and maybe for another 30 years, see how it works. We've got all the railway going there. We've got 76% of the growth has been in the southeast with Pakenham, Cranbourne, all the horses. So that way they're not travelling so far with all the there's 500,000 people in the city of Casey now, let alone we don't need them travelling through all that Monash traffic, to get anywhere. So Sandown's a great spot, and we've got 2 beautiful tracks there. So I think we need to get money from Sandown definitely as a business for our industry, but keep the tracks at the same time. That's my thoughts on it anyway.
More to come on the other side of the break from Robbie and Matt. You're watching After the Last on this Monday night.
So I've been asked many times, Matt, what are your swing thoughts as you're swinging? What are the secrets of golf? What do the pros know that we don't know? So I heard this one time and I remembered it. And if you write it down, it really helps. Golf is geometrically oriented to deliver force. It's about the physical and muscular thrust and the geometry of a circle. A golf swing can be divided into 24 basic components, each having between 12 and 15 variations. Now, when you think of all this and you get it all set, hopefully you'll hit shots like this.
He's multi-talented, Matt de Kock, isn't he? Racing, golf, you're starting them both, Matt.
Yeah, well, I do racing part-time and golf for a living. I take money off the likes of Robbie and my dad on the golf course to earn some extra cash.
Is that the case, Robbie?
Yeah, I've only one-way traffic. You hand out cash, that's how that works.
Tell us about, though, because you were, in all seriousness, going to America at one stage to go down the golfing path before racing jumped in for you.
Yeah, well, growing up, I was very interested in sports, and golf was my main sport. And I got offered a scholarship to an American university, and I had 9 months free after finishing school to, just wait for college to start in America. And I said to my mum and dad, I'll come and work for you guys and earn a bit of extra cash in the 9 months before I go. And the day I set foot in the stable, I knew exactly where I wanted to be. And it wasn't, I still want to be on the golf course, but the bug bit me that racing was what I wanted to do in my life. So that's how it all worked out.
So I'm sure with racing, you're wanting to get involved with horses like Aberfeldy Boy, for instance. His performance on Saturday was huge, last Saturday, Derby Day. How many times have you watched this replay and just thought, if only he gets clear a little bit earlier?
Yeah, we've watched it numerous times now. He was absolutely fantastic, and to think that he's just still a maiden, and this was only his second time on the turf. He's had a couple of starts on the synthetic and one at Geelong, and so he's still just a big baby. He's got so much potential. He's so raw and immature. So the next season with him is going to be so exciting, and it's fantastic for Jim. Jim asked us to buy him one stayer at the Magic Millions sale, and we bought him, and it's really worked out well for him, and looks like he's got a bright future.
So what now? What now? A spell, and then what are they going to be the autumn targets?
We weren't going to go to a Bairnsdale Maiden after that, so we decided he could have a spell, and we'll target races like the South Australian Derby and the AJC Derby. Races like that look more suitable for him.
It's very exciting, very exciting.
Now, one horse that I've been a fan of after seeing his jump out, so seemed to back him at the wrong times. I backed him first up, second up, fourth up, the Gem Sahale, Robbie, but he was really good again on Saturday in defeat.
Yeah, he was terrific. He just, you know, he's taken a long time to get to Australia because Matt's dad bought him here. He started from Gilgai Farm here, and he went to South Africa and he won on debut. Then he ran second, and then he went to Dubai, but never got his chance to race. And then he ended up coming to Australia, and Mike is still in the ownership with him here. So he took a while to get fit, didn't he, Matt? You know, and then by the time he got fit, he bolted in at Sale, and then he was terrific on the final day. You know, Snapper just literally snapped him up late, but unfortunately, but he was very good here. But now he's fit and well. He's a horse that could, as you pointed out, with his trials, he showed us enough talent that he can really go through his grades. You know, he's
a 5-year-old Entai, and Matty's, as Robbie suggested, has travelled the world. I mean, it's quite an incredible story that he was bought here at the Melbourne Premier Sale and now back racing as a 5-year-old, 4 years later.
Yeah, it's an incredible story, and the Sheikh actually originally owned him, Sheikh Mohammed bin Khalifa, and he kindly leased the horse to us because he had maybe lost a bit of patience with the horse, having travelled so much and not doing some racing. So the goal is to hopefully get a little bit of black type into him because he's got a nice pedigree, and being by Star Spangled Banner, a colt, that would be very valuable to us if we can get some black type in him, and we think he's definitely good enough. But he's been very ring rusty, having had 2.5 years off the track.
So why so long? I mean,
yeah, well,
injury or
no, a bit of both. He travelled back to South Africa obviously as a young horse, and our plan back in the day was to buy horses out of Australia, let them prove themselves in South Africa, and then ship them to Dubai to race for the royal family there. And he did that. He proved himself, but then due to the quarantine restrictions, they lost a lot of time in the travel, so he missed the first season in Dubai, and then the last season, which was now January, February, unfortunately the week before he was about to run, he pulled a muscle. So they decided, okay, well, we'll take the long-term view, and since I had moved out here, they thought, well, why not send him down here? The racing's, you know, so lucrative, so they sent him down here, and now we're seeing the reward.
And are we starting to see as well your influence on Griffiths de Kock Racing, Matt, from the point of view of he's a horse from South Africa? We saw Thaler win the colours of Mary Slack, a famous owner in South African racing, that these South African connections are now getting involved in your stable?
Yeah, well, I guess by me being here has opened up a door to South African owners that have always wanted to race in such a fantastic industry. It's so competitive, and we're always watching it back home, watching Melbourne Cup days, and you strive to race on the big days. And so by me being here, it's a point of contact, and by our family having successful, these loyal clients of us in South Africa, they've been very willing to support us, and we think we've done a good job so far, and we would like to do an even better one and pull a big one off for them. And it's been great, and it's been nice to be with Robbie, who's had 30 years of experience, and not have to come out here and be on my own and be green, you know. So it's been awesome.
Michael touched on your story before too, Matt. You've been here, a couple of years now. It's been a wild ride from COVID to fatherhood, training partnerships. How do you look back on it all? Has it been a bit of a whirlwind?
Yeah, any experience is a good experience, and I've absolutely loved it. It's been challenging at times, and that's because of what the world's thrown at us with COVID and etc. But I've learned so much. I've grown up so much in 2.5 years. I never thought I could grow up so much as a person and as a horseman. So I've really loved it, and I feel like we're, you know, going to be an overnight success, but it's taken 3 years or 4 years to do it. So it's really, really good, and to experience Australia as well with my partner Monique, and to now have Liam, who's a little Aussie because he was born here. It's awesome. Very, very good.
Talk more about Dad. I mean, obviously a wonderful reputation, one of the world's great trainers, and the influence that has now on you in terms of how often do you speak with him, and do you call him with little issues? We've got this situation. What do you think we should do? I mean, how important is that?
Yeah, well, when you've got the Tiger Woods of golf on speed dial, it's an awesome tool to have. You know, we always chat every single day, whether it's about horses, golf, sports, whatever it is. Liam, we chat every day. He phones me on the way to work. I phone him in the evenings, and we're always bouncing things off each other. And he's an absolute legend, and I feel very lucky to have grown up learning from him and my mother, who's a very well-respected horse person in her own right. So I've had an awesome grounding, and it was just good for me to come out here and do my own thing as well. And it's been awesome.
And Robbie, from your perspective, the de Kock family getting involved with you, I mean, how have you, what's that done for you?
Oh, I think it's, I mean, you never stop learning in this business when you're dealing with the most inexact things you can have, weather and animals. So it's fantastic. But I think for us moving forward, it gives us wonderful opportunities because of the stables in Dubai, and Mike's got stables in Newmarket as well. So once these horses mature, like Najeem's Hale might go back and run there in March, you know, for example. So it just depends on how things are going at the time, and with the international clients now supporting us, as Matt said, which is wonderful and fantastic for the stable. We're the only stable in Australia set up with basically an international base. We just haven't used it because our horses are immature. So, you know, our horses could, you know, I know during COVID, you know, our horses were too immature, but if say Hal Vorson was good enough at the time, he could have jumped on the plane and gone to the Alcos to the sprint, and with no restrictions, because there's staff there in Dubai that could have just taken him off the plane, you know. So it's made our stable incredibly strong, both with the experience of the training, with everything that you pointed out, and the clients and the training basis. So I think it's a wonderful thing.
And we've also enjoyed the banter between the two of you. This photo might have got sent in, from Matt de Kock. There's a good bit of banter between the two of you, isn't there, Robbie? Things like that get thrown in with your special skills?
There's some very good banter, and there's a lot of tyre marks on my back where I get thrown under the bus, as you can see.
Excellent stuff. All right, we've got to leave it there for a moment. We don't want to get Matt in too much more trouble. We're going to take a break. On the other side, it's time for our Fast Four. Time to wrap things up, as we always do on a Monday night, with our Fast Four. We've already had a bit of debate about the first topic to discuss here. We saw Nature Strip and Robbie both beaten as favourites on the weekend. Was it a case of one run too many at the end of a spring campaign, or were there other factors there?
Could be other factors, because, you know, Anamo's race could be tempo related. Zaki hasn't been on the dry ground properly since Doomben, really, so maybe he got conditions to suit and they didn't. Could be that. Nature Strip, he's probably had a busier campaign than them all because he's been overseas. Possibly him, maybe, but I think there could be more to it.
What would you put it down to, Matt?
I agree with Robbie, tempo related. Zaki, Animo, Thunderstruck all kind of followed the same program, so I don't think it was going to the well one too many times. I think if you run that race again on another day, you'd probably get a different result, you know.
And Nature Strip only had 3 starts. I mean, I know he went to the UK, but he only had 3 starts once he was back here. So I don't think that's a major issue. And I think Champions Day is just going to continue to grow. I think it's a great concept.
Great concept, yeah.
Super day. Speaking of Champions Day, part of the change of the spring programming, with that in mind, have you had to change, or do trainers have to change the way they approach the spring with their top horses, given all these new races and the new timings of races?
Oh, I think trainers always adjust to suit programs. I mean, that's part of what they've done for years. And but I think getting back to the day, I think was a great success. Getting back to having horses in too long. No one's been in work longer than Alligator Blood, hasn't it? He's won 3 Group 1s. So.
He's been going well. What about, from your point of view then, Matt? Is it a time of change for how you're preparing horses for the spring, given that the calendar is changing?
Yep, but everyone gets the calendar months beforehand, so you can plan properly, and you just set out your goals for the season, and you know exactly where you stand. So.
We know what race you'd like to change in the program and be added a Fillies Group 1 sprint.
Good call.
Yeah, it would be great. I think that we've got the 1,000 Guineas, we've got the VRC Oaks over a mile and 2,500. Why not a 3-year-old filly sprint?
Yeah.
What about, we saw Salcombe win on Saturday, looked terrific, stay with a turn of foot. Are we seeing a change in bloodstock, what horses are being bought from overseas to suit Australian conditions like that?
Oh, I think so. I think, there's bloodstock agents now really looking hard at and understanding the type of horse that's going to be successful here. But, you guys are involved in that process as well. I mean, what do you think, Matt?
Well, I think that the Australian industry is so strong now, from 1,200 metres all the way up to 3,200 metres, that the horses sourced from over the world are very flexible now. It's not only Melbourne Cup horses coming, it's milers, 2,000 metre horses that are being bought, because the support of Australian racing is so strong at the moment.
And just a final one, we'll give this a bit of extra time as well too. Cranbourne Cup this Saturday, then you've got the Ballarat Cup, and then a couple of weeks later, Pakenham Cup for the standalone Saturday meetings. How significant are they to the towns and the clubs involved?
Oh, I think they're very significant, because it gives the sponsors, the clubs, the towns themselves a chance to, get very involved locally. They can have their marquees days. They can take their staff, all the things that clubs used to do on their Wednesday meetings and so on. They can do that on the weekends. The standalone gives them that opportunity. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, we've got a bit of extra time, which works out nicely for a couple of reasons. One, barriers at nominations, Matt, was a topic that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, it's something that I've seen all over the world, because I've been lucky enough to travel around the world. I've seen different formats with regards to nominating and accepting, and what I really liked, what I've picked up from overseas, is I like to see my barrier when I nominate, because if I nominate for Thursday and I draw well, then I don't have to waste time and money to nominate for Friday. Because I've drawn well on Thursday. But if I've drawn badly, I can renom and not waste time by accepting and then having to scratch and tell the owners I'm scratching because of a wide barrier, and it's much more streamlined.
So when you put your nomination in, you get allocated a barrier.
Yeah. So if there's 50
1 to
noms,
50, yeah?
50 noms, and you draw a barrier 3 out of 50, you know you're going to be an inside draw somewhere. And if you draw a barrier 50, you know you're going to be on the widest gate. If you're 25 out of 50, you'll watch the acceptances and see how you come in and make a decision.
We've got to leave it there. Gents, thanks very much. We'll see you next time. It's been great to have your company on After the Last.